This is Jean. Like millions of others who work in business today, Jean is a victim of information. She doesn't lack information, she's deluged by it. It comes to her in all shapes and sizes, from files and memos to reports and computer printout. Only mostly, it's too late.
Look, Graham, I'm still chasing those end-of-year estimates. In other words, you're telling me that the base data hasn't come through from sales again.
Often information is held up in bottlenecks elsewhere in the organisation.
Next month? You're joking. Well, that'll be useless to me.
People are working hard at producing information, but it just never seems to be there when Jean wants it. When the information eventually does come through, it's often in the wrong format.
This is no good. This tells me nothing. I want it broken down, section by section.
The problem isn't simple. It seems to be spread throughout the length and breadth of Jean's company. Often she gets information from more than one source and finds it doesn't balance.
It just doesn't add up, Linda. It doesn't square with what I've got, direct from the section heads.
The cost and effort involved in extracting information is frequently prohibitive.
We'll have to ask personnel to go back to the original files and compile us a report.
Okay. But last time they did, you know, it took a month. And they had to hire 3 extra staff.
What? Just for a straightforward report like that? No.
Yet despite all these problems, Jean's company has high hopes for the future. It wants to use its computers to exploit its great store of customer information.
Oh, did you see the memo about that meeting Dave set up?
No?
Brainstorming session, apparently. He wants suggestions.
What about?
How we can set up a new customer database.
What?
So we can get ahead of the market.
Her company wants to use its information in new and imaginative ways. But it can't even supply her with the material she needs to tackle her day-to-day problems. This kind of absurdity is now a common feature of corporate life. But what lies behind it? Organizations are in many different stages of development. They have many different ways of trying to organize their information. In the past, the data processing department is likely to have loomed large in these efforts. As the problems of information handling and control have increased, organizational structures designed to deal with these problems have multiplied. These might range from technical specialists who design and run the computerized databases where much of the organization's information is stored, to centers set up to help people get the best out of their personal computers. Yet despite increasing numbers of people and technology being thrown at the problem, things don't seem to be getting better. For many organizations, they are getting worse. Why?
A lot of organizations have huge difficulties in getting the right information to the right people and at the right time. Some of the difficulties arise from the information systems which exist at the moment. They can act as a very constraining force. It's very difficult to actually change the information systems, and that means that the business can't change the way it operates because it's very dependent on the information systems which exist at the moment.
Information systems developed in isolation don't address the real needs of people like Jean. What's needed is a centrally coordinated approach to developing the systems and satisfying the need for information. But what form might this take? One approach is information resource management. But what exactly is information resource management?
Information resource management is concerned with getting the right information to the right people at the right time.
It doesn't square with what I
Without a proper approach to
Direct
information resource management, investment in the most sophisticated new electronic systems is likely to prove a waste of money. But the task of organising information effectively and efficiently is a far-reaching one. There are no miracle solutions on offer. So where do you start?
The first issue really is getting the information systems managers and the users to actually understand not only that information resource management is actually needed, but also that it's actually needed now, because the organisations obviously have existed to some extent for a long time without information resource management in the form that we're expressing it, and so they have to understand why now is the right time and why now they need to actually act to solve this problem.
A clear understanding of the reasons for introducing information resource management is essential to obtaining genuine management commitment. This is vital in order to succeed in changing the way information systems are developed and the way the system development processes are coordinated.
Well, I think the most important aspect is actually obtaining genuine management commitment. That is management commitment which is actually based on understanding the impact of introducing something like information resource management.
Both user and information systems management need to be fully committed. Otherwise there may be U-turns or significant compromises at the first opportunity. Staff commitment is equally important.
When we're looking at staff commitment, we're looking at, if you like, changing the approach in the organisation to be a more quality-led organisation. And this means that the staff themselves have to have changed attitudes. And also, there's a big problem because there's a likelihood that new roles and responsibilities will be introduced which will actually cross some of the current boundaries. So those issues have to be addressed.
End users will have to be trained so that they are able to understand and, if necessary, challenge the results of analysis and the way the systems they are to use are developed.
Another issue is actually gaining much greater end-user commitment in the whole development process. What we're after, one of the main aims here, is to get the end user so involved in the process that he feels committed to the product in exactly the same way that the system developer is committed to the product.
But what about systems which are already in existence?
I think one of the biggest problems and the most difficult issues to actually handle is what to do with the existing application systems portfolio. There's already been, in most organizations, a very large investment in creating these systems, and the major problem here is that we want to retain, obviously, the value of that investment for as long as possible. It's a very difficult issue to actually solve and can only be looked at on a sort of individual basis.
What's needed is a new information infrastructure designed to meet the needs of the entire organization. Essential to this infrastructure will be a number of important functions. How these functions are carried out and who actually undertakes them will vary from organization to organization. But the basic nature of the functions remain unchanged. One function is information systems development. This is the job of producing systems based on the organization's information requirements. On the face of it, you'd think this work would solve all the company's information problems, but this isn't the case.
One of the problems is that historically individual systems have been developed on an individual basis, and in reality they don't gel very well together, so you get a tremendous spaghetti of systems which are then very difficult to change on an individual basis. Essentially the systems were designed to solve individual problems rather than catering for the overall needs of the business.
To be successful, information systems have to be planned strategically in line with the real aims of the business. A prime focus of information resource management is data analysis. This involves understanding the nature of the information the business needs and the way this information is used to meet its aims, so that the information systems built reflect the true nature of the business. Modelling techniques have an important part to play in this, making the process visible to all concerned.
Models and diagrams are really very powerful communication aids to confirming with the end user not only his requirements but also how the business operates and the basic and most important business rules which are actually operating in the business.
While data analysis concerns itself with the nitty-gritty rules by which data is handled in the organisation, someone has to work out the big picture, a sort of architectural plan of all the data in the organisation and the way it is used. This is the work of the data administrator. The data administrator has to coordinate and consolidate the results of data analysis activities undertaken for individual systems and produce guidelines for the design of the information infrastructure.
In the first place, probably the most important beginning for the data administrator is the development of an information architecture, and essentially that's a way of modelling the data in the organisation and the way that that data is used, both within the business and also by the computer systems which are actually implemented in the business. He also plays a major role in verifying the results of analysis by the individual business teams and confirming that those results actually fit into the bigger picture which he's developing. So that's an important aspect because it starts to produce consistency within the organisation, a consistency of view of the data, and everything is perceived to actually fit into the grand picture.
The data administrator has a wide range of functions, but his chief focus is on the needs of the business. By contrast, the work of database administration is more a job for the technical backroom specialist. It is concerned with the physical design of the databases which actually hold the data.
And some of the aspects which the database administrator has to be concerned about is the functionality of the databases, that is, whether they can serve all the requirements which are actually going to be placed on it. The performance of the databases, that is, whether they can actually serve those requirements quickly enough and in a balanced way for all of the different types of user. And I suppose that the last issue is the security and the integrity of the data which is actually stored on the databases. And here we're considering the safety, both the safety of that data and also its protection from unauthorized access.
With these functions in place, the organisation has a database which can support each department of the business. This is fine as far as it goes, but there is also a need to help the end users to get the most out of the data. This is the role of the information centre. The information centre is the visible open door to the end user. Here people promote and market the information systems to the rest of the organisation. The information centre, it's argued, is the ultimate key to exploiting a company's information resources.
The primary role of the information centre is to act as a facilitator. In essence, one of the most important aspects is to actually help the end user to get at data himself and do his own processing on that data. And the ultimate result of this is that in a lot of cases the end user can have instant response to his requirements, even if those aren't premeditated and pre-planned requirements.
The final function is that of data dictionary administration. Data dictionary administration creates and maintains the encyclopedia or dictionary describing all the data used in the organisation. It includes how the data is used and, perhaps more importantly, how to interpret that data.
The Data Dictionary Administrator provides support to data administration because he's actually recording a lot of the definitions which have been gained and reviewed by the data administration function. He provides support to database administration, not only because the dictionary itself is the repository where information about the databases is held, but also the connection between the business data and the way that data is actually stored on databases. He provides support also for the system designer and the developer. And I think another aspect which is often ignored at the outset or not recognized at the outset is the support which the Data Dictionary Administrator, through the use of his data dictionary, is going to give to the end user. At the moment this isn't prevalent, but where you have an active information centre, then it's critically important that the end users themselves who have access to the data itself on databases actually know how to find that data and more specifically how to interpret that data. So that's a very important aspect often ignored at the outset.
So how are all the functions of information resource management related?
All these functions are actually very closely integrated. The business analyst is probably the primary source of most of the information about data models and functional models. He provides that information to the data administrator who reviews it, who confirms its validity in relation to other things, other information which the data administrator already has. The information is subsequently moved to the Data Dictionary Administrator, who puts that information on the Data Dictionary, and the Data Dictionary then becomes a resource which everyone uses, not least the Data Administrator we've already discussed, and the Database Administrator, because the information is actually held on the Data Dictionary about the databases and about the location of data. And once this information is actually available on the Data Dictionary, it's actually used by a number of other people. It's used by the system developers, it's used by the implementers, and as I described earlier, it's used by the information centre and the end users who want to find out what data there is and where that data is.
But an efficient infrastructure on its own is not enough. You've got to use the right tools to cope with the special challenge of information resource management. One problem is dealing with the huge amount of information gathered during the process of analysing a company's data.
This is obviously vital for the immediate implementation, but more interesting, as a considerable amount of effort has been put into actually gathering this information, is making this information available to future users. And if you want to do that, then you have to actually manage that information well. And in addition, there are issues concerning the presentation of that information, because one of the things we've stressed so far is we place a great amount of emphasis on graphical representations, and so you need graphical tools which will actually support the development process. Another aspect of this is that if you don't give people diagrammatic support tools, then they'll be very reluctant to change and keep up to date diagrams and models that they have created. Some of the kinds of tools we're talking about are analyst workbenches, and there are other similar tools with slightly different names, such as CASE tools, which stands for Computer-Aided Software Engineering, and IPSES, which stands for Integrated Project Support Environment.
In the next few years, it's likely that the functions included within analyst workbenches and CASE tools will both reside within the IPSES. This will provide a central tool for the use of the system's developer and project manager, and also a major support for information resource management. But will information resource management really solve Gene's problems? What are the benefits it will bring? For one thing, the organisation will be better informed about what data it has, where it is and how to interpret it. Users will be better informed about the business because they will receive a higher quality of information. The lead time required for the Information Systems Department to respond to users' needs will be reduced. This will mean the organisation will be able to respond much faster to business change, a vital consideration in a rapidly changing business world.
A major difficulty faced in traditional system development environments is that quite small changes can have a very significant impact in the amount of time it actually takes to implement those changes. And this is largely a result of the complex arrangement of systems and the complexity of those systems as well. And one of the prime aims here is actually to simplify the systems so that it is possible to make changes very much more quickly. And in addition to being able to make changes in the larger systems much more quickly, it's also very important to give the end user much faster response to, in particular, the smaller types of questions, the ad hoc queries which come up, which at the moment can take days or weeks in terms of response, and quite frequently that sort of time span is too long for the information to actually be usable.
The Information Systems Department will benefit from better disciplines and methods and will be more focused towards the needs of the business. The rest of the organisation will be streamlined as redundant tasks in support of the management of information are eliminated.
A significant benefit to the Information Systems Department is improved control of its own resources. It has much better information on the business, it has much better information on the data which it is looking after. More importantly, the information is reusable, so that information which has been painstakingly collected during the analysis process is not actually wasted by immediately having to be consigned to the archives after it's been used on the first implementation.
Another benefit to the Information Systems Department is that the maintenance of information systems is less risky, and the department will be able to assess more accurately the impact of change. The final benefit of information resource management is productivity.
Productivity is a key. And here we're talking about productivity both in regard to the end user and to the Information Systems Department itself. From the end user side, the end user is going to waste much less time in chasing around and trying to assemble incompatible pieces of information. From the information system side, then the productivity gains will mainly be focused on reduced maintenance and reduced effort in enhancements of systems which have been necessary because of poor analysis in the first place. In addition, they'll be able to make much more effective use of powerful tools such as fourth-generation languages, because a prerequisite for applying and making effective use of those tools is the availability of a sound and robust information architecture.
But what will all this mean to Jean? It will help her deal with her day-to-day difficulties, providing her with the right information in the right format at the right time and at an acceptable cost. But it will also enable her to tackle some of her longer-term objectives, things that in the past never seemed to be within reach. When this is taken in the context of the organisation as a whole, the rewards of information resource management therefore seem vast. But how easy is it to achieve them? It's a complex process. There's no single pattern for success, but there are a number of issues which must be addressed. It's no use tackling the organisational problems if you don't look at the tools. It's no use concentrating on tools to the exclusion of other aspects, such as the infrastructure. You have to find appropriate tools and techniques. You have to be able to deal with major changes in the organisation. Information resource management is a major challenge. The problems aren't small, but the rewards are great. And there is an urgent need to confront these problems. Otherwise, the modern organisation risks increasing difficulties in the future. It risks being strangled by its own systems and buried by the information which is supposed to serve it.